Today's talk is about glory and your future. It is so interesting to me as we engage ourselves in watching the news, usually 2 or 3 times during the day or evening, and realize how horrific the news has been lately. And then to come to a service like this morning and hear a talk about the glory of the inner self, about the glory of what our potential for the future can be, about beauty and goodness and joy and freedom. It is so incredible to see how increasingly different the teachings show us that life can be, and then we see how life is today in today's world. I think it is more important than ever that we meditate every day. Meditation is simply to take one really beautiful phrase or word, or for example, beauty. If we take beauty and sit down for 10 minutes every morning and ask ourselves, what is beauty? That beauty takes us into our inner life and gives us images and ideas and direction about how to live and how to feel and how to think what beauty is. Then we get up from that 10-minute experience and we begin to create a magnetic sphere around us. And that sphere begins to draw, eventually draws what is so beautiful in life to us. The right relationships, the right books, the right place to live, the right people. It is so important today to be in right relationships. We have enough of the world that we are being exposed to that is so ugly and so demeaning of the human being that we don't want our personal environment to be wrapped up in the same mirror image. So we have to find a way to expel what we are being bombarded with, see, on a day-to-day level. Meditation is the way to allow that to happen. So sometimes people who are on, poor health and are on heavy medication and so forth can't really get into advanced meditation, but don't worry about it. If you just take 10 minutes a day and sit down in front of your meditation altar and think about beauty and goodness and righteousness and joy and freedom, just for 10 minutes, what is happening, let me repeat myself, is that we're beginning to build a sphere of light and magnetism in our aura that makes us so powerful, reminds us so much of our inner glory and what our future as an individual, as a group, as a humanity is going to be, that pretty soon when we engage ourselves with people who are ugly, who are demeaning humanity, who are demeaning our family, who are demeaning our own beauty, that all of that ugly energy is repelled, it's repulsed. And instead, our power, our strength, our beauty begins to transform their thinking, begins to transform their nature. So we start, with our family, and then that extends out into the group. That extends into your community and to the other groups that you are part of. But it must be done on a daily basis because darkness is great. Okay? So it is like with my iPad. As incredible technology as my iPad is, I still had to plug it in every day, to charge it up and get enough energy to take it through the next day. So we have to do that with ourselves too. But we're plugging in to the glory or that divine self within. So let us talk this morning about glory, glory in the future, our future. But I want to start with this affirmation, and we can all, if I can speak, excuse me, if we can, I'll say it and then we'll repeat it. It's kind of long. But it is an affirmation that we can say every day with deep concentration. So let us try this. I renounce in the light of my inner flame. I renounce in the light of my inner flame all physical, emotional, and mental habits. All physical, emotional, and mental habits. I renounce all intentional and unintentional thoughts. I renounce all intentional and unintentional thoughts, words and actions, which are against beauty, goodness, righteousness, joy, freedom, striving, and sacrificial service, which are against beauty, goodness, righteousness, joy, freedom, striving, and sacrificial service. I renounce the weakness of listening to the whispers. I renounce the weakness of listening to the whispers of dark forces, which are intended to lead me, into pride, vanity, separatism, crimes, deceit, and violence. I renounce all urges and drives. Toward greed, exploitation, unrighteousness, and artificiality. Toward greed, exploitation, unrighteousness, and artificiality. I turn my face toward the light of the inner sun. I turn my face toward the light of the inner sun and ask for strength, wisdom, and courage. To combat the forces in my nature. Which try to prevent me from progressing toward great light. May your blessing shield me all this day. And we'll sound 3 ohms. Shanti. First of all, I'd like to welcome all of our webinar students and friends, and to let you know how grateful we are that you are joining in and sharing this experience with us. I also want to invite you to ask questions. Terry is running the video today, and he will let me know what your questions are so I can answer them. Okay. I think we're getting the idea as we listened to Richard read the Torkham's poem this morning, and we just together sounded this beautiful and powerful affirmation that if we want to elevate ourselves, we must renounce all that is unworthy for our ascent. If we don't remember anything else from this morning's talk, it is this phrase: let us renounce that which is unworthy and is preventing us from taking this ascent. What is ascent? Ascent is evolution. It is progress. It is advancement. It is changing ourselves. It means to transform wherever we are, even if, God help you, if you think you are the most incredible human being to God's given earth, that you are still able to progress further than that. I know a lot of people that think that way about themselves. I used to think it was pretty great, and then I decided it's not so great, because they're going to stay at that level, see, of where they think that they are so darn great. Well, we are going to be so by far greater than they could have ever imagined if we continue to renounce all that is unworthy of our ascent. Don't we still know those who are using a standard typewriter? And people say, no, computers are not for me, or no, I'm not going to get on Facebook, or no, internet, no, I'm not going to involve my, well, that's okay, but you're going to stay in the dark, because being on the internet, being on Facebook, being on Twitter, maybe, and having access to the entire world, using that information does one of the biggest things, which is put us in contact with our brothers and sisters all over the world, puts us in communication, puts us in a place where we recognize there are not any borders, even though the countries try to make us believe there are borders. There are no borders between co-workers. So as we expand and learn more about culture and about the nature of life and human beings, at that point we recognize there's so much within our nature that we must renounce because it's holding us back. Our traditions, our doctrines, our culture, what mom and dad taught us, what our church taught us, that we want to be good little boys and girls. And by being good little boys and girls, we're not progressing because we don't know what good is. We think good is pleasing mommy and daddy. And here we are, maybe 50 years old, still trying to please mommy and daddy. No, we're trying to please hierarchy, not mommy and daddy anymore. At 18, they were supposed to put us on our own. That's what Agni Yoga says. Yeah. And now some of us have children that are trying to make us please our children. Don't you? Well, if my child gets upset with me, then I better change my ways so I can make him happy with me. That's not going to work. Why is not going to work? Because that means we are living in darkness and not allowing the light to come into us, ignite this seed of glory within us so that we can move out of the past into the future and into the glory of what our future is destined to be if we try to ascend that mountaintop, to the mountaintop. I suggest that from time to time we all retreat. And I'm going to read to you a list of vices that you might want to take notes and make a list of these amazing vices. And then see if you can renounce them from your nature. I was thinking, I'm sorry to take a little step aside here. I was listening to, I love this early morning program on the news on CNN Sunday mornings, and Michael Lewis was talking this morning. He's written an article that is in Vanity magazine, interestingly enough, on the life of Barack Obama. He spent several months with Barack Obama, and one of the things he said is that Barack Obama is so aware of vices and virtues. And of course, those two, you know, that phrase really stood out to me. He talked about how, he said, you know, Barack Obama says, don't get engaged with anger, don't engage yourself in controversial things that make you angry. He says, it's not worth your time, it's a waste of your time. The way he talked about Barack Obama, you could tell, if you take the politics aside and just look at this human being, he's a great man. You know, he has great virtues, great values. And I found it to be so inspirational. You know, the courage that this man has, and the way Michael Lewis talked about him was just, it was a wonderful way to start the day. Anyway, so back to the list. Okay. Artificiality, this was, you know, one of the words we used in our affirmation this morning. We're going to renounce being artificial, hypocrisy, ugliness, harmfulness, deceit, theft, slander, malice, treason, abuse of sex, food, alcohol, and drugs, hatred, greed, jealousy, and fear. If we can eliminate these enemies from our life, we can enter the path of glory. Deep in our heart, in every human being's heart, there is a strong thirst for glory. Glory is a memory deep within our hearts, where one time long ago that we as human souls had more freedom. We had more freedom, we had more space. We had more creative powers as a collective self, which we lost in our journey toward individualization into the lower worlds. This is why we don't want to come back. This is why we don't want to hear this call. We want to put plugs in our ears. So after we've passed it, it's time to reincarnate, and that call comes forward, and we say, what? We can't hear you. Because we remember this and we love it. To be part of freedom and to have more space and to have these creative powers that individualizing into the lower world seems to limit us. It is the memory of this lost glory that is urging us to re-achieve it consciously by our own merit. See, by our own merit. And that's what puts us on the path of discipleship. How many of us are listening this morning to this broadcast? You know, typically we have 16, 17, 18, 19 people. And here, so let's say we have 30 people listening to this talk today. What a great place to live our life in this kind of thinking, in this kind of world. To realize what that thirst is within us that wants to move forward, and realize how life is trying to come in and put a binding around us so that we just, all we're engaged in now is just trying to struggle from day to day to stay alive, pay our bills, you know, and then you go to sleep at night, you wake up in the morning to pay your bills, struggle. See? Until someday we have this awakening and that remembrance, wait a minute, I'm not struggling for my employer. I am here to serve, not to be usurped. We each have this divine spark within us. Let's try to ignite that spark and feed that flame of one another instead of taking that old candle snuffer and try to snuff it out in one another. So glory is not only a memory of a state of beingness that we had in the past, it is part of our future. We're going to go back into it by our own merit. The seed of glory is ourselves. It is you, it is me. This seed has its future or its full blooming within us. This is why, if you can, that 10 minutes tomorrow morning, or when you're feeling really bummed out or you're being bombarded by all kinds of stuff, you just take 10 minutes and you close your eyes, you go within, and you visualize the most beautiful flower you can, your favorite flower, and see it as a bud, and then see those petals opening. That's you coming into full blooming. This is our potential. It is not fighting with everybody on the phone or on the internet or with our kids, our grandparents or our parents. It is we are in the process of unfolding this seed of glory within us, our future. Inside we feel and know that we are not lost in the chaos of the lower worlds, and we try to have glory. We try to be glorious. And so what happens as an alternative is that as we're trying to be glorious and beautiful, we become egotistical and vain. See, because we haven't renounced those vices yet. And it's those vices, like artificiality, that is keeping us from ascending. Artificiality is also mechanicalness. The whole intention in the service of Christ was to unveil, and is to unveil, the seed of glory in each of us, in humanity, and to make it grow and unfold until perfection is achieved. How different are we today than we were a year ago today? When I look at White Mountain, and we're going to be celebrating our 30th anniversary next month, imagine 30 years. Are we any different today than we were 30 years ago? Absolutely we are. We are different than we were a year ago. Hugely different. What about yourselves? What about your family? Are you the same? Or are you growing and unfolding? As we talk about these things, we begin to awaken. An urge within us begins to awaken, and as it does, it gradually builds a vision of glory which draws our aspirations and dedication toward that vision. Such an electromagnetic vision eventually mobilizes all of our efforts for the actualization of our inner glory. It is going to happen. Let's let it happen in this life. We are told that in the near future, greater temples will be erected. And with the finest art and technical achievements, people will be introduced to the inner glory. Well, take a look at our sanctuary. We look over here at Torgrim in his picture and it's such a beautiful montage. And then you look over here at St. Sergius, you look at the Mother of the World, you look at the banner of peace behind us, and what you can't see, you see the tent mountain in the back. You see the Om symbol over there in the corner, and the beautiful colors and the peace that this energy gives us. The finest art and technical achievements, people will be introduced to the inner glory. Now, the next step is through ceremonies of initiation. Imagine what a transforming effect our future finest orchestras will have, playing the most beautiful symphonies, harmonized with rays of color and chanting and movements and hymns and choruses and so forth. Imagine that happening. With our technology and organizing and orchestrating all of the ingredients of the ceremonies of initiation, these ceremonies will be performed to invoke the inner glory of the human being. Well, this is already happening subjectively. Do you know that? It is there. It is happening. All we have to do is bring it into manifestation. And someday we'll talk about why that is. I can say this much, it's because when people, so oftentimes when, people live their lives, they're dead. All they see is what's in front of them. Or they go to sleep and they're deader, if there's such a word. It's like you fall asleep in your pillow and you wake up maybe half a minute later, and yet it's 7 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning. And you do that day in and day out. So we have to bring these ceremonies of initiation, find ways to bring the technology, the musicians, the colors, the sounds, even these magnificent robes that our initiators will wear, and bring it back into the presence of humanity to remind them of their future glory. It will awaken them. There's a painting by Nicholas Rourke in which a man is shown in rainbow glory with 7 persons prostrated at a distance in front of him. He is shown in all the colors of the rainbow. In the painting, he can be seen, but you can feel. He can't be seen, but you can feel that someone is there. The scenery looks like the Grand Canyon, and the light of the approaching Great One shines like the dawning sun. It is this glory within, in front of which all the part of our nature must finally prostrate itself. Here's a little more of the historical past. I found this interesting. The crown, there's a lot of symbolism in here. The crown worn by kings and queens has its esoteric history. It is said by tradition that humanity and nations were ruled by divine beings. These divine beings came from other solar systems to guide humanity. They were very advanced individuals. But at that time, people were more etheric and astral in their nature. They could see the crown chakra of their leaders, and they worshiped them as celestial beings. As the rulership passed from generation to generation, humanity no longer had rulers who had totally unfolded the head chakra. Thus they created an imitation, and they built crowns that resembled the head chakra. Similarly, they replaced the radiant colors of their former kings with pompous uniforms or vestments, and the real live glory of divine rulers slowly faded into conventionality. And we are definitely seeing the continuing decay of that. As the race develops, however, the most advanced members will again demonstrate similar glories. Do you not want to be? Do we not want to be? All of us want to be demonstrations of similar glories. See, but it's not to be artificial. We can't pretend. We have to be real. People will not need to have elections because they will see the more advanced glory of a leader to be and choose him as or her as their ruler. This is how hierarchy in the higher worlds function. Election is a proof that we are not sure whom to make our leader. I was just thinking of, and I'm sure all of us are, the millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that are being spent on advertising so we can make a choice of this man or that man. Wouldn't you like to have just a little bit of that money to pay all your bills? Yeah, really. It's shameful. It is absolutely shameful. Let me list the components of glory. Health, beauty, strength, and purity. Components of glory. Health, beauty, strength, and purity. Gracefulness, magnetism, wisdom, and insight. Fearlessness, creativity, freedom. Renunciation. Incorruptibility, dignity, higher psychic powers, inclusiveness, patience, joy, and solemnity. So I only have about 5 minutes left. So let me just share a few of those, talk about a few of these components. Health. Do we have any questions, Terry? Do you want to?
Yes, the first one is egotism the result of striving but not renouncing our vices and thinking that we are progressing but are not?
Can they hear you on the? No. Okay. As I understand it, is egotism the result of striving without renunciation? No, it's not. And the reason I say that is striving is progressing and advancing. Just think about this. Let's say that you were positioned into being the president of a corporation. And let's say that you inherited this position because your father was there first, or your mother. And they bequeathed this position to you. And all of a sudden you realized, I've got a lot of work to do to prepare myself to step in their shoes. For us, it would be like stepping in the shoes of the master. So we start to prepare ourselves to lead that corporation not only as well as mom or dad did, but better. So day and night, hour after hour after hour, we begin to work on ourselves and to prepare ourselves. That's striving. The egotist is the one that says, man, I know it all. And they sit behind their big desk and they dictate to everybody else what to do while they are becoming lesser and lesser and lesser as a divine being and bigger and bigger and bigger as an egotist. Okay.
Okay. It said, do the 7 prostrate beings represent the 7 centers giving their control to the soul?
Well, that's one way to think about it. I think that's a very beautiful way to think about it. I think one of the greatest joys that we have with trying to understand the symbolism of Nicholas Roerich paintings is that it means something different to all of us. So when we think about those 7 beings prostrating themselves, it could be renouncing our 7 worst habits. Or it could be a prayer being said to ignite these centers in the astral body, or the 7 centers in the mental body. Or, see where I'm going with that? Yeah. So it's our own perception, our level of consciousness that will be ignited when we look at that painting. Okay. Health. I've got a couple of minutes. So I'll talk about health and strength. Last week we talked a little bit about the physical, astral, and mental health. If you remember that. We cannot be glorious without physical health. We just can't. Age after age, after many incarnations, one eventually learns how to create a body that is really healthy and is able to carry on endless labor for the sake of humanity. So that's why, even if we are 100 years old, we're not going to give up working on our physical health, our emotional health, our mental health, because in our next incarnation, we will come back with healthier bodies so that we can engage in endless labor for humanity. This is how the body of Christ was. His chakras, his glands, his nervous system were of the highest order. Gracefulness. I love gracefulness. Gracefulness is not a weakness. It is not hypocrisy. It is not etiquette. A glorious person thinks gracefully, speaks gracefully, acts gracefully. And you can't pretend to be graceful. You must even discipline yourselves gracefully. Gracefully is a sign that you are beginning to graduate from the human kingdom and enter a higher kingdom. And one last one, fearlessness. A fearless person is glorious. A fearless person is glorious. If you are fearful, you cannot be glorious. It is as simple as that. Fearlessness is built into our nature life after life as we live a life of purity, in harmony with the laws of our conscience. To climb toward our inner glory is not easy, but the beauty of the achievement of glory is the greatest challenge that life puts in front of us. So do not give up. This is a great talk this morning. I hope you took good notes and you'll think about it and then make that list, and see if we can't renounce those vices from time to time.